Hi. You gonna be in the video today? Maybe not. Oh. Hey guys. Today we're going over the motion hearing in the Idaho versus Kohberger case from June 18th. Brian Kohberger's team wants to delay the trial because they need more time to build their case, and the state wants to proceed as planned with the date for the trial scheduled for August 11th. And so in this motion to continue, each side gave their arguments for why the judge should decide in their favor. There was another sealed portion of the hearing, which was not available to the public, in which they went over the alternative perpetrators who may have been responsible for the Idaho 4 homicides. And I'm assuming, because everything is sealed, everything is happening behind closed doors, so we don't know exactly how this process is unfolding, I'm assuming they compiled a list of possible alternative perpetrators, and then they give their arguments for why they should be able to talk about these people. But as I said, everything to do with that is sealed, even the documents that have been released so far. So I guess we won't know much more about that until trial comes around. But for now, for today, we're going to look at the public portion of this hearing. So let's see why Brian Kohberger's team wants to delay the trial. His attorney, Ann Taylor, spoke first, and she has many issues with many things. For example, how the defense has been receiving discovery since the beginning. They needed to ask for a lot of clarifications, for timestamps, for what exactly is relevant among the folders, huge folders of evidence that they receive, what exactly will be used by the prosecution, so that the defense can also go and review that information and not bother with a bunch of additional stuff that is irrelevant, and so that they can build a case for Brian Kohberger. The other huge issue is the media coverage of the Idaho college students' homicides. Now, of course, this isn't just a problem for the defense, this is a problem for this case, period. There was an NBC's Dateline episode not that long ago about the Idaho 4. In that episode, that documentary, the focus was primarily on Brian Kohberger, and some previously unknown information has been released. Now, we don't know how much of what was said is in fact true, how much may be rumors or slander or completely false, but we do know that Judge Hippler is taking this very seriously, so the source of that leak, where the Dateline people got their information, the source of that leak is being investigated separately.
The Dateline episode wasn't just a one-time deal back in May. That continues to be talked about. Everything that happens in this case continues to be talked about, and this court has a duty, a responsibility to make sure that Mr. Kohberger receives a fair trial, and a continuance may be the way that the court can best protect Mr. Kohberger.
But there's more. There's also an upcoming book about the Idaho 4 by James Patterson titled Idaho 4, An American Tragedy. The book claims to be, quote, based on exclusive interviews, the definitive account of the murder of 4 unforgettable students by a cold-blooded killer. This case hasn't even gone to trial yet. No one has been convicted yet. There's a gag order in place. Everything is sealed left, right, and center. And yet somehow for this book they got exclusive interviews with inside sources and definitive accounts of these 4 unalivings. Then there's another docuseries coming out in a few weeks. How convenient, because that's also when the jury selection is about to take place. And in that series they also claim to have info from sources close to the investigation, inside sources.
Why would you target those 4? There's a big realization that we had been stalked for so many months.
Now, in this Prime show, they interviewed families and friends of the victims. They interviewed the 2 girls who arrived to the house, the 1122 King Road house that morning when the roommate DM called them over. And they're basically the people who found the crime scene. There's also Hunter Johnson. He is the one who allegedly first found the 4 poor victims. We don't know how much of the stuff that is coming out in these documentaries and books and whatnot. We don't know how much of that is real. We don't know how much of it is made up. The problem is, it's just tainting everything, and I absolutely understand the defense team's frustration, because, you know, as if this case isn't messy enough on its own. As much as I personally would want this trial to finally happen already so that we can get some answers, I genuinely don't know if it's better for the trial to go ahead as planned or if it would be better to wait. Because on the one hand, and we'll get over that in a second because that was part of the state's rebuttal, on the one hand, all these documentaries and series and books are a problem. It's very likely that even more speculation from the public and from the media will happen, because when everything is sealed and secretive and no one's allowed to talk about anything, that is a breeding ground for conspiracy theories.
There's a claim that there's inside sources that provide information in this case. At the very least, the moment we start attempting to select a jury in this case, those things are going to be on everybody's TV, everybody's social media feed, and some of the very witnesses that will be expected to testify will be taking part in the docuseries at least, and maybe noted in the book. That is, in and of itself, an exceptional reason for us to have a continuance to let those things play out for a while.
Now, can someone explain to me how this is a thing? How can these people talk to the media and give out information with the gag order in place and with the trial still being weeks away? Like, what can these people talk about without violating the gag order and without getting in trouble for it? Genuine question. Do let me know. Then Ann Taylor also brings up the grand jury materials that the defense had to ask repeatedly for and fight for, trying to access the investigative genetic genealogy information, then realizing months into the case that it was actually the FBI who did a huge portion of the IGG work, and yet somehow they don't have all the documentation that would be typically created when you're doing that kind of research. Plus, the fact that the FBI violated their own internal policy when investigating these genealogical databases. But, that's why it is just a tip. That's why Kohberger's name is just a tip. I don't know if it's just me, but Ann Taylor sounded really done with everything during this hearing. And honestly, who could blame her? Because the defense has been repeatedly asking for certain things, repeatedly going over the same issues. And yet the tendency from from both judges, because let's remember the first judge, John Judge, the tendency has been to rule in favor of the prosecution, typically, not always, but typically. She also brought up the fact that their experts haven't yet had the time to review all the information that they receive, mitigating evidence, stuff connected to Kohberger's family and medical history.
And the investigation to fully evaluate needs to be thorough. That means that records have to be collected. That means that collateral interviews have to be done, and those have not all been completed. And it's not because of a lack of diligence in this case.
And she actually mentions that they received some new discovery just this week. So mid-June, late June 2025, and the trial is in a couple of weeks.
I would note for the court that discovery has been ongoing. I received discovery just this week. It is discovery that I have not reviewed yet.
She says it directly. They're not ready to go to trial yet, and that is concerning. And then we have the state's rebuttal. This time, speaking for the state was Josh Hurwitz, and he had the following to say.
What the defendant and the counsel are asking the court to do is delay this trial because of their subjective, prospective beliefs about how an ineffective assistance of counsel evaluation would happen by an appeals court if there is a conviction.
Would denying a continuance violate Brian Kohberger's rights by causing unfair prejudice? He basically claims that what the defense is arguing is subjective, but the court, so the judge, should look at the objective evidence, which, in state's opinion, supports denying the defense's motion to continue. Hurwitz makes an argument that the defense doesn't need to go through Kohberger's entire life history and medical history to build a case for him. Now, I kind of see his point. If Brian Kohberger is innocent, one would think that it shouldn't take as much, it shouldn't be that difficult to defend him, to build a case that proves his innocence. And I do wonder why his defense keeps bringing up the point about his medical history, his family's medical history, that they need to thoroughly investigate all of that. And yeah, I see maybe it's because of his past substance abuse and his autism diagnosis. Maybe that's so that they can present a solid argument for why he may act a little bit differently than most people but that his behavior shouldn't be taken as a sign of guilt by the jury. But I don't know, it does seem a bit excessive to someone, on the outside, like us, the public. I don't know, I guess it's hard to tell because we don't have the full picture, and we are just gonna have to wait until trial to see what happens here. And as I briefly mentioned before, the state also makes an argument that if the judge grants the defense's motion now because of the gag order violations and the media coverage and all that mess, then it's possible that if something like that happens again, the defense could ask for another violation if there's another documentary and another controversial book or whatever. And then they could be delaying the trial indefinitely, which is a bit of an exaggeration in my opinion, but also it is an argument, yes.
The other thing I would mention with respect to the publicity is that it puts us at the whim of the media. Every time there's a breaking story, every time there's a new book or a new documentary, are we going to continue the trial indefinitely? And that seems to be the danger in what the defense is asking for. We call it a perpetual continuance, and we haven't seen a proposal about when this trial could take place. If there's a continuance, what seems to be the strategy here is just to delay.
Ann Taylor points out that they have mitigation witnesses that refuse to speak to them, but that they have information on Brian Kohberger's medical history. So potentially important things, but it's really difficult to get to them because the people refuse to speak to them.
The state knows that there are mitigation witnesses that we've listed because we had to disclose them, but there are people that have refused to speak with us. That presents a challenge in the case. A lot of the witnesses that refuse to speak with us have to do with records, medical records of Brian Kohberger, past treatment records of Brian Kohberger. Those are important things that the gravity of what they have to say can't be known to our experts until we have the opportunity to fully understand those things. And we continue to work on access to witnesses.
She's basically just trying to say it's not our fault that we need more time. She emphasizes that their team, the defense team, is not responsible for these delays or that they are simply delaying as a strategy. It's just that this is a very complex case and there's a lot to go over. Judge Hippler's ultimate verdict is he will revise and give his written decision later, so we'll probably get another court document here. But he does encourage everyone to continue as if the trial is going to take place on the date that has been set.
All right, I'll take the matter under advisement. In the meantime, I fully encourage everyone to continue as if the trial is going to take place when it is scheduled for. Again, I reserve the right to write the decision that I come to, but as of now, I would tell you that it's likely you're going to trial on the date indicated.
So given all that, it is highly likely that he will deny the defense's motion to continue, and the trial will not be moved to another date. So that is it for this hearing. It was pretty brief and to the point. If you enjoyed my recap, please leave a like. It really helps me out, and let me know all your comments down below. Do subscribe for more videos on the Idaho versus Kohberger case. I'll see you as soon as there's something new and important to talk about here. And until then, take care. Bye guys.